Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the famous studio Superman cartoons. Now, this series started when the studio was the Fleischer Studio, but then as they had negated on some loans and the Fleischer brothers left the studio, it then became the famous studio, which was not under the Fleischer's direction anymore. So the first 9 Superman short films from the 40s are from a different studio from the later 8. Now, the later 8 Superman shorts are Japators, Showdown, 11th Hour, Destruction Inc., The Mummy Strikes, Jungle Drums, The Underground World, and Secret Agent. They don't have the same kind of sci-fi feel that the original 9 did, or at least the original 7. Volcano and Terror on the Midway aren't very sci-fi. It's more about World War II propaganda. In fact, a lot of them are World War II propaganda, especially 11th Hour, which has a Superman sabotaging Japanese ships and various Japanese military operations. That one I think kind of crossed the line because it just ruins the Superman character. I really feel like Superman wouldn't do sabotage, especially after he has stopped so many people sabotaging US military stuff. 5 of the 8 famous studio shorts have World War II propaganda in them. 3 of them don't, those being The Mummy Strikes, The Underground World, and Showdown. Probably the 2 worst are like Japators and 11th Hour. Japators is still actually fairly entertaining. It's a fairly well animated short, and I think it moves very well. It's just Japanese stereotypes are very, very bad and very racist. I think in Japators is kind of the worst, but they don't show them that much, so it doesn't bother me as much. This was the time that these shorts were produced. That was kind of what the public wanted. This was early days in terms of World War II. The Japators, the first short of the famous studio's Superman shorts, was released in September 1942, and the last one, Secret Agent, was released in July 1943. It's sad that it started in such a cool sci-fi 40s world and then it had to end with all this World War II propaganda. They do a little more fantasy in this when they're not doing World War II stuff. I think the best short of all of them for me is The Underground World. I think it's the best written. It's the most imaginative because they go in this underground world and there's all these hawk people. Why would there be hawk people if they're underground? I don't know. That doesn't make a lot of sense, but it looks cool. They go to this underground world as a story for the Daily Planet. The Mummy Strikes isn't as interesting as you think it would be, which is kind of unfortunate. I think, you have a mummy there, you could do something with it, but no. And Showdown is relatively lame, where you have someone dressed up in a Superman costume committing crimes. Japators and Secret Agents, I feel like do feel very much like they could have been directed by Dave Fleischer, even though they're not. Secret Agents is a lot better because it doesn't have any stereotypes in it, and it's just Superman saving the day. Lois is not in Secret Agent, interestingly enough. I'm not sure if there's a reason for that or whatever, but she's just not in Secret Agent at all. It's just Superman saving this Secret Agent lady. It's the only one without Lois. They were directed by 3 different guys. Seymour Knittl, who was kind of my favorite. He directed Japators, The Underground World, and Secret Agent. There's also Dan Gordon, who directed 2, and then Izzy Sarber, and he directed another 3. Seymour Knittl, he seemed to get the shorts a lot better and get what they were doing with the previous Fleischer films and be able to transfer it into this new studio. And I think with the other directors and the style of these shorts, there's far more dialogue. It was something I talked about in the last review of the Fleischer studio shorts, is that there's not a lot of dialogue. It's really just about the adventure and the animation. In this, there's a lot more dialogue in it, and it's not as look at this cool animation based as the other ones are, unfortunately, because I think these don't really move the same way. They don't flow the same way. They're not as exciting because of that. They're a little more stationary and a lot more boring. With the work of Seymour Knittl, that style seemed to work for it, especially in The Underground World, which is my personal favorite. I think my 2 favorites are actually the last 2, which is The Underground World and Secret Agent. Those seem to be the better 2. And I actually remember seeing Secret Agent a few times when I was a kid. No one really likes these as much, and having to watch them all in a row, which I did to shoot this video, I realized they're not that great. And I always go, hey, The Underground World isn't so bad. And I think The Underground World is actually pretty cool. I think it's probably the standout. But if they're all fantasy and sci-fi stories, I think this would be actually a decent series, and people will go, oh, well, it's not as good, but it still had some fun. But since it relies so heavily on the World War II stuff that the Fleischers didn't do before, it is very much tonally and stylistically different, and it's very noticeable. They're still incredibly well animated. They're not as classic. The shading isn't as good as the Fleischer Studios did, and the direction's nowhere near what Dave Fleischer could do. None of this really even holds a candle to all of that. I still enjoy some of this, but it's certainly dated World War II propaganda, and there's certain days I do kind of like watching some of that stuff. And I don't think it's so heavy on, you know, racism. They're still quite entertaining, but it's nowhere near what the Fleischer films were. This whole series ends with Superman saluting to the flag, and this was a very flag-waving time. And Superman was a flag-waving character at the time, so that's who he was. I wish this had gone on. It didn't. It was canceled. A lot of people say it was canceled because of its high costs, and they replaced it with Little Lulu shorts. I don't know if it's like they just kind of moved everybody to a different project, but that's the project they all worked on next. I haven't seen any of what the Little Lulu film they worked on right after this. I'm semi-curious, but I don't know if I'll actually check it out. Anytime I'd watch the DVD I have of all of them with a friend, they'd always want to stop right after the Fleischers were over, you know. And I'd always indulge them and do that, and I'd go, oh man, why don't we just check them out? And they're not awful, it's just they're not as great. 11th Hour is the best example of how bad they could get. Some of them are pretty cool, and I still think Underground World is a great short, and I think all the ones that Seymour Knowles directed were actually pretty fun. And so they're not the worst thing in the world, they're actually pretty good. And if you're a fan of Fleischer Superman shorts, I would say check out these other 8. They're nowhere near as classic as what the Fleischer brothers did before them, but that's a tall order. So if you have seen the famous Studios Superman cartoons and you would like to talk about them, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to. And that is the end of the Superman review series. And thank you all for watching, and check out the other videos I have done, all 5 of them.